This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host of the Recruitment podcast. And I love the fact that we're at a stage in our evolution as a podcast channel that I get to bring people back, especially those that I had a personal fondness for. And this is somebody who, I have to say, as we are recording this, is recovering from the winter flu virus that everybody seemed to have got struck down with over the back end of 24 and the start of 25. So bear with if there's a little bit of sniffling and coughing. It isn't me, it's them. But without further ado, I would love to welcome back to you all today Chris O'Connell, who is joining us. He's a non-exec director, speaker and host, and founder of Base Mindset. I cannot wait to get into the dirty today, Chris. But how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm honoured to be here. I was honoured the first time and to get back on your brilliant show the second time. And we met briefly at the expo, which is amazing as
Very
well.
briefly.
I'm feeling all right, I've had 14 days of this flu. It's been going around like anyone's business. It's no point moaning about it, but I feel like this week is the first week of my year and I'm ready to go. I'm ready for you. So hit me with it.
Ready to go. I know you just, yeah, we almost met in real life. I think I was coming out of the VIP section at the Recruitment Expo, but I was on my way to a seminar
Yeah.
and I saw who's this really tall, because everyone thinks I'm really tall, but I'm really short. Who's this really tall, handsome man? Oh, it's Chris O'Connell, quick,
Oh, I'll take
quick.
that. I'll take tall and handsome. I get that all the time. Everyone thinks I'm about 4 foot, but I don't know what it is. And they see me in real life, and I'm 6'2". They're like, who's this?
I know it is funny, but we will definitely have to meet up in real life at some point. But look,
Yes.
there will be plenty of people who know exactly who you are, but because
Mm,
we boast the fact that we are a global community, there might be some that are listening that are new to our
yeah.
channel also. Can you give us a synopsis as to who you are and what you actually
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, well, I'll start with my sort of history, really. 25 years in recruitment, started out with the S3 Group. Everyone knows who they are. £1.5 billion business. I was their worldwide top biller, billing £1 million a year. And to be
Wow.
the worldwide top biller for that business is something I'm really, really proud of. I
So
was
you
there for
should be.
5 years. Huh?
So you should be. That's
No, no, thank
amazing.
you. Yeah, I know. It was a great training ground. I made them a lot of money and really learned the art of recruitment.
Mm.
Left, set up my own business, got that to 25 million, 100 people, 3 offices, 14 awards. I was Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. I've been very vocal about what happened with that business in terms of I did a private equity deal that went very wrong. I had
Mm.
to take them to court and I lost all of it. Lost my business, which is millions of pounds. All my wealth was bankrupt, homeless, kind of access to my children was gone, divorce. I had a really, really, really difficult time. Came back onto LinkedIn about 4.5 years ago, started to tell my story in a very, I think, open and vulnerable and authentic way and purpose-led way, and kind of built a community and built a brand. I've got 75,000 followers. I've got my own podcast as well. But I am now an NED business coach mentor. So I've helped over 65 recruitment businesses build, scale, and grow through a mixture of my experience of operations, brands, marketing, sales, and all that kind of stuff, but also actually my purpose-led approach and my kind of vulnerability. I think that has actually gained me a lot of clients. So I do think I'm a little bit different to the average or normal archetypal NED.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the next stage, which is things like doing my book and doing more stages. But I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
We are going to come back to Chris has mentioned a book there. We are going to come back to that
Yeah.
at the end, because I am going to say if there is a link you can share with our listeners and our viewers, then that's
Mm.
brilliant. They can pre-order it if they're listening to this right now, but
Yeah.
once it's out in circulation. But I want to pick up on that because that was going to be my starting point with you, that I think if I look at where we're at in terms of you and I knowing each other, I think we connected when you did start to share around COVID time. And I think you were one of the
Yeah.
first leaders, and I mean this, I'm not blowing smoke up your arse, that genuinely put themselves out there in a really vulnerable position when no one
Mm.
really knew what was going on with what we were sharing. We're talking specifically about LinkedIn as a platform, right? And that's when you and I started chatting because I was doing a similar thing. And I think I've got so much respect for anybody, never mind whether they're a leader or not, that shares their true sort of story. And there's been so much humility from you with the vast openness that you've shared your personal story, your mum, your abandonment, your children, losing
Yeah.
your business. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that is one of the reasons I had to get you back on, and it's taken some time to get you back on because for those listening, we definitely know who our audience is now, and I'm really proud that I know where we are as there's so many podcasts to choose from. It's brilliant. I love
Mm.
podcasts, but for
Yeah.
me. we have two distinct groups of people that give feedback. They actually message us, and it's
Yeah.
leaders who are
Yeah.
just like, is it just me? Is it just me that's feeling this? And they're the ones that I know will get a lot from this. But actually, it's those newbie recruiters who are saying, I'm looking at my business leader, I'm not hearing anything from them. And so I
Yeah.
think this twofold approach of where your purpose has always been that no one else feels the way maybe you did. I don't know if that's is that what underpins why you do, like, what is
No,
your
I
actual
think
why?
I've been on a journey with this, right? So I think at the start, I probably was focused on the likes and the validation because I probably needed it. I'd been through so much personally that I kind of like I knew what I wanted to do, but I had no idea that by being so open and vulnerable, I'd then build a community of actual people I mean, I'm not joking here. I get dozens of messages a week about how much my content is actually impacting people in a really, really positive way. So I think that my intention now is to be completely myself. I think it's harder to be somebody else than it is to be yourself. And if that means me one day being really succinct and stoic and really kind of revolutionary and have a wisdom kind of day, or I was on a live podcast last week, and I literally almost had a nervous breakdown on it because I was doing some work and loads of old wounds came up, and I was just literally my raw self.
Oh,
So what I'm trying to say with that is because I'm being because I think I'm being so real and so authentic. I'm now at a stage now where I don't necessarily care what people think of me because I know what I think of me. I know what I'm doing is real, honest, and when you get to that stage, it's like, well, they can trust me all they want. They don't know. I know. And I think that's the difference. And that's why I feel quite proud of myself. It's been a bloody journey. Do you know what I mean?
I love it. And I've just to let out a big breath because you've reached a point as a human being where you don't actually give a fuck, but you
Yeah.
do. And
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
and it's this kind of what you've just said there, and I know you're an emotional person, and I think that's again why people really respect that. And listen, there's always going to be the haters out there. There's always going to be the people
Yeah,
that
of course.
you're putting it on or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, I think it's really, a critical point in your career, in your life.
Mm.
I've got so much respect for where you're at with,
Thank you. Look,
and
I'm not
that's
going
your
to
purpose
deviate.
now. Your purpose is to
Well, it is my
encourage
purpose. I'm
people.
not going to deviate from that. And along this journey, right, I feel as if people have misconstrued or misunderstood or me in terms of they think I'm this sympathy seeking, probably people pleasing, probably overly generous, kind hearted guy. And I think I am to an extent. And I've learned the hard way actually, but I'm not going to deviate from my true authentic self. But also I've learned along the journey recently that I'm much more forthright than I ever have been as well. If I tell my clients, my friends, my colleagues, everyone to fuck off now, whereas before I wouldn't do that. And I think actually tough love, or people you need. I think a good coach and a good mentor, which you are as well yourself. You need to tell people what they need to hear, not what they
Yeah,
want to hear. And I think there's
yeah,
too much of this shit on LinkedIn about kind of like just tell the truth. I put a post out today about we are all salespeople, we are all influencers in some way. Of course we are, but people just do it differently, or they shy away from it. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a marketer. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a consultant. Everyone's trying to affect an outcome, so let's just not dress that up. Do you know what
no.
I mean?
I know, and I was going to come back to the sales thing. I've actually not prepared any questions, as you know. We're
Good.
freewheeling it, but I want to talk about sales. But we'll come back to that in a minute
Yeah.
if I remember. But I think the reason I wanted to start with this is because for me, so many leaders are at a point where we have just traded through, and I think we're still in it, by the way,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really difficult part of the economy has been very challenging for business leaders, certainly for the last 2 years. We had that COVID boom. We then kind of traded weirdly in 2023, and 2024 has had some real levelers for a lot of people. 25% of recruiters, maybe even more, have left the industry. We've seen companies that seemed to be really solid have gone out of business. And for those leaders who are kind of hanging on, going, right, we've managed to navigate through, we're in a position now, like, we know, this is nothing, there's not going to be anything new in saying you should be discussing, this on LinkedIn, you should be sharing this. But I guess for me, if a leader's listening now, for them setting their stall out from an internal and an external communication point of view, with, and it's so hard to synopsize it in a podcast where it's lots of different people listening, but what would you say, I guess, say the first thing a leader should do right now to communicate internally to their team where they're at, and then how do they communicate that to their community on LinkedIn?
Having worked in, I can't even remember how many, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bloody different downturns or whatever. This is probably one of the worst.
Agreed.
But in every single time there's been a downturn, I always see it as an opportunity, because if you do the basics consistently, you're always going to get results. It's the ones that aren't prepared to do the basics consistently. This sounds quite basic in itself, but it's simple. What happens is they fall by the wayside. Unfortunately, they close or they shut down because they're not prepared to do the BD. They're not prepared to understand that in order to be successful in recruitment, you need to pick up the phone. You need to do some of the old school ways, as much as I love automation as well. So for me, it's about, yes, let's not dress this up. It's a difficult market. But ultimately, if you're not putting in the hard yards and not organized, not mapping your market and not getting on the phone. I mean, I've been shocked last year. I was really shocked with the amount of consultancies or recruitment consultants who aren't willing to kind of engage with their customers. They're hiding behind the tech. They're hiding behind the email. They're qualifying candidates on email. It's a relationship business.
Yeah.
So I know this isn't anything revolutionary, anything different. So I'll be saying to the guys, look, in order to get out of this, we need to understand it's about building relationships. In order to build relationships, we need to have as much contact with our customers as possible. So if anyone's unhappy with that or needs coaching and training, tell me. But I think it's just about automation is really important and tech is really important. But I think that we're in danger of relying on it so much that we're not building the relationships. So it's a blend of the two.
Agreed.
That helps answer the question.
No, it does. So, I mean, if I've been listening correctly, it's going back to the basics. I don't like the term old school, even though I am from a similar era to you. I prefer to use the word traditional.
Traditional, I agree, yeah.
Because, there's nothing wrong with that word. I think there's it's seen as a bit of a twee thing. But actually, if we look at the people that are thriving, the people that are doing well, and there are lots of people that there seem to be kind of pockets of people that are just absolutely fucking smashing it. That's all they're doing. It's not rocket science. They've got the automation in place. They've got the systems in place. They're using machine learning AI wherever they need to, that isn't the relationship and influence side, but they are getting out and seeing their clients more. They are on the phone more. They're going back and giving insights and adding value more to their customers. And that includes the leaders. That's the point I don't want to lose here, that the leaders are still hands-on.
On that point, because you mentioned communication, how you communicate internally is how your team's going to communicate externally. So what I've also witnessed is a lot of leaders and businesses, they're always on Slack or Monday or whatever it is and communicating with their teams via text messages all that time. And if you're always doing that, then your team will do that externally. So sometimes if you want to convey a point, try and do it in person, try and do it on a Zoom, try and do it on a phone call. Don't try and coach somebody or have a meeting with somebody on an email internally, because that's going to affect them. So communication is really, really important. And how you communicate with the team internally is how you communicate externally. So I think the onus is on connection and communication internally, and then that will spread out externally.
And I mean, I've just made a real bold claim there that I think the best companies, i.e. the companies that are doing better in the current climate, have leaders that are still very hands-on in terms of know exactly what's happening. Would you agree or disagree with that in terms of the
no, absolutely. So even with my client, right, with my clients, right, I have regular Zoom meetings with them and all this kind of stuff, and we talk about business, we talk about operations, marketing, and branding. But every single one of my clients, they see me as a friend because they feel comfortable talking to me about stuff that's not necessarily business related, and there's a real connection and bond there. And it enables me to get really under the skin as to why they're not doing certain aspects of their business. And I think a leader, yes, you can do the KPIs, the automation, the operations, and have all the stuff in play. But if you don't know intrinsically what makes up that human motivation,
Yeah.
I think you can only go so far with it. So having a bit of vulnerability, being a bit open, and you know, and I think that really plays into it. So it's about emotional intelligence as well. And I think back in the day, you could get away with just making 100 calls and being this kind of like quite telly
Polish. Mm.
tell leader, where you've got, I think you just got to open up a little bit and kind of get your person to feel a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. And I think that's where you clearly attract leaders that see that you're doing that and then want to
Mm.
replicate that, I suppose, but in a way
Yeah.
that's meaningful for their clients. So I do want to bring this sales mentality back into the conversation because as a rec to rec, my day job, um, I saw during the last 2 years, which I agree with you 100%. I've been in recruitment 26 years, I think quite at the same similar time to you.
Yeah.
It is possibly, I think, been the hardest market to trade through, partly because there are just so many more recruitment companies. It never, 20 odd years ago and in the recession of 16 years ago, there just weren't as many competitors. So I think that's why it's possibly been harder. And also there's a lot more internal people positioned. But I think that if you were to, put me on the spot and say, right, what's the main reason people have left the industry in the last 12 months? It's because they didn't really understand what sales was. And I actually don't think, for a lot of people, I don't think it was their fault. I think their training got missed because we talk about,
Yeah,
what
I
happened
agree.
with COVID. No one needed to sell, basically. Anyone could have placed anyone. So I think,
Yeah.
sales has almost become like this dirty,
I,
it's Wolf of Wall
I couldn't
Street.
agree with you more. And I think this is where LinkedIn hasn't helped that
No,
because I think there's this, it's almost like this dirty word where you can't be a salesperson, or another
yeah,
salesperson. But actually, the people that are saying that are actually selling to us their way of
exactly.
working. So I think whilst I think LinkedIn's important, I think what's happened is a lot of people have tried to copy or imitate these marketeers and these personal brand people, and some of them are really good. I mean, you know as well as I do, personal brand's important, whether you
Mm,
like that term or not. But you've still got to be yourself. You're still a salesperson, and
mm,
you're right. The market exposed people last year because they expected the jobs to come in,
yeah.
or I just think that if you don't like sales or is shying away from sales, you probably shouldn't be in recruitment.
But the thing is, I don't know about you, but I mean, I've got friends who've got careers in all different markets. I've got,
Yeah,
my daughters, I've got friends who work in different things. Everything's a sales job, whether you're a waitress,
of
whether you're a
course,
secretary, whether
of
you're a
course.
doctor, you're all selling. I'm going to ask you a question here. Chris of 25 years ago, I just don't think you look like you've been in recruitment that long, but you just look good for your age. Okay. You look
Thank
good,
you.
full stop. Chris at the start of his career, if you were now, as in 2025,
Yeah,
how would you go about selling your services? Because so many of the people that listen to this podcast are in the early stage of their career. So
yeah.
you were sat down now today and going, right, I'm going to build my desk. How would you go about selling?
Well, I think there's so many agencies that say they're specialists and they're not, right?
Mm,
So for example, I had a Java consultant come to me and say, Chris, I'm specking out Java people to everybody. I'm not really getting anywhere. And I said, what, you're specking out Java people to everybody? Yeah, I'm doing the USA. I'm a Java consultant for the USA. I'm like, right, well, put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes. I'm a hiring manager and I work in the fintech business and I take on Java people. You're sending me Java people. I might be interested. If you start sending me Java people that worked at fintech businesses, I'm definitely going to be interested. So it's all for me, it's all about how you actually introduce yourself. It's not Chris O'Connell from Recruitment Limited. I'm a Java expert, same as every other fucker on the planet. No, it's Chris O'Connell here from Java Recruitment Limited. We're a specialist Java consultancy that specializes in working with fintech organizations. We're
yeah.
working with the likes of Fintech One, Fintech Two. And it's kind of like giving that credibility. So it's for me, it's about niching down. As an example, when I started out back in the day, I was given AS400 mainframe as a market, was an old school legacy system in the Southwest. There are only 45 companies that had this system.
Wow.
I placed in 43 of them, was spending £1 million a year. See, that's a prime example. But what I'm trying to say is that what's in it for the client? You're not a specialist if you do Java across the USA, for example. It's about conveying your speciality, immersing yourself in the market. The more knowledge you've got, the more confidence you've got, and the more easier it is to sell. So for me, if that answers your question. It's about
It does.
breaking it down, becoming a master.
It does. I've just got a really interesting question. The 45 companies that did that use that system,
Yeah,
which I don't know what you just said, but I'm trusting you on it. 43 out of 45. So the
yeah,
two, were they your
yeah.
headhunt targets?
Well, I think I got promoted and moved into something else. So I was about to get them in the end, but I did
Oh,
someone
okay.
else. So,
I'm
you
just
know,
interested because there are plenty of people listening, myself included here. I mean, I'm niche, but I'm also agnostic niche, which I always think is a bit of a contradiction because I just recruit recruiters into recruitment agencies in the Northwest, very specifically all fee earners,
quite
non
like that agnostic niche. I haven't heard that one before.
agnostic niche, because I recruit across any recruitment industry.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're salespeople. Ultimately, if you get a good recruiter that's worked in supply chain and procurement, you ring up a finance recruiter, they're probably going to want to know about them because it's a similar vibe.
Mm.
But I'm just going
Mm.
to park my comment for a minute because most people don't do rec to rec, although some days it feels like it. I think, despite the fact that you started your career all those years ago, I 100% think, and that we haven't prepared for that question, that's what people should be doing now
Yeah.
because
£100%.
you've got the technology to do your research. You can understand how to
Yeah.
benchmark. You can
Yeah.
see, everyone has full visibility now of who the decision
Well,
makers
it's,
are. And I just think
yeah.
it makes you immersed in your industry and you become that industry expert, which is how, for me, you become that top biller.
Yeah. Exactly. So when you get a CV in, you know pretty much managers that will take that CV on straight away. Or when you do put a vacancy, because you've been speaking to these people, you can literally get those people straight away, as opposed to I'm going to do a bit of Java, a bit of this, bit of that, and it's kind of like less is definitely more. And I know that's not anything new, but the amount of times people just go off on tangents. So I'm very much about time management and small tasks, breaking it down, getting a top 30 in each of those, and even with say Java, you can break that down into different kind of sizes of business. And so I'd go vertical into horizontal. So Java into fintech, Java into
Yeah.
martech, and so pick three industry sectors and three technologies. So even with yourself, you could do if you wanted to build a massive rec to rec business, you could find out all the life sciences recruiters, all the financial services recruiters, and just match apples with apples. I know
Yeah.
sometimes you can cross fertilize, but
Yeah.
I think it's just about being systematic and breaking it down. And when you're on the phone to somebody, right, you can have a meaningful conversation as well,
Mm.
not just about bum on a seat. And then you're into the realms of looking at solution providing and kind of like really understanding the nuances of a client and a project and the outcomes and all that kind of stuff. And you're not just like everybody else. So I'm a specialist recruitment person, and that's they think they say I'm a specialist financial services recruiter. You can't be specialist in financial services. That's massive. You've got
Too big.
banking, you've got insurance, you've got
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
it's just about that, I think.
I think, but actually, that's a very nice segue back to the leaders listening who think it's acceptable to just, especially hiring an experienced person, which, there are probably more people on the market than there ever have been that probably wouldn't have been
Yeah,
on the market before. You have to
yeah.
have a strategy to it. And you can't just
Mm,
see how it goes. It takes time to build these relationships.
yes.
I hear too often that people, plonked on a desk, given 3 months, not made enough money. And it's like, it's just
Mm,
ridiculous to think that that's the notion. So I think
yeah,
going back to your whole underpinned purpose-led leadership, for me, it has to be back to that communication. And I think it just
yeah,
gets, I think that the problem with, especially having traded through what we've just traded through, is that we've kind of started the 2025 sort of mindset for a lot of people of this kind of, come on, let's go, right, we've got all this to catch up on and we need to make up for it and get to, what happens
yeah.
with NI and everything in April. And it's like this panic instead of going, right, why are we doing this? How are we doing this? Who are we doing this with? And I don't know whether or
It's
not
if
it just
yeah,
calming down sometimes is actually the way to
I
win.
know, but for me, it's about going back to being kind of like the CEO of your life. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's
Yes.
like I think even as a recruitment consultant, right? I think if I was to ask one of the things I do for mindset is that they're fearful about picking up the phone or they're fearful about is you yeah, I ask them who they are. They say a recruitment consultant. So you're not a recruitment consultant. You're much more than that. You're effectively you're running a business, aren't you? So it's about treating your desk like a business. It's not about where the next placement's coming from. Yes, you need to have an eye on that. It's like how many new contacts am I adding? What
Yeah.
what knowledge am I learning? It's
Yeah.
about having mentality of being an entrepreneur and a business owner as a first person. And I think that's the key. That's the difference in getting them to realize that.
I've always maintained, anyone that's been listening consistently for the 5 seasons, that if we were to turn the clock back to day one of recruitment full start, each
Yeah,
recruiter would run their business like a P&L, and they would not get
yeah.
paid commission. They would get paid on the profit of the desk. So it would just
Mm,
create these little microcosms. I think it would mean there probably would be less recruiters out there, and I think it makes it a much more commercially viable proposition, which just
Yeah.
the whole thing just blends into this whole mindset of ownership and empowerment. And you go back
Mm.
talk about servant leadership before. I think that's the best way to create empowered people, where they don't need to be told to get on the phone when the jobs have dried up, or they don't need to get on the phone. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. They understand that it's business development, cold calling, or whatever approaching clients isn't this mystical being that you should do every Tuesday and Thursday. Mentality is that every call that you have is an opportunity when you're speaking to candidates, when you're speaking to clients, every comment you put on LinkedIn, everything's business development is a weird thing. If it was called making more money, they'd probably do it. I think because it's called business development, they don't like doing it. It's part of the fabric of everything that you do.
It is. It's a holistic approach to the fact that every single thing you do, whether it's taking a reference, whether it's
Yeah.
inviting somebody to, obviously loads of people do events and run podcasts, and every little bit of communication that you do and that your recruiters do for you is a holistic approach to sales, in my opinion. Let's talk about your book, because I think there was a little hint
Yeah.
again. Let's talk about it. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, I'm halfway through writing it. It's a project very self-fulfilling. It's like as I'm writing it, it's kind of like a self-help book for me as well. So it's basically half of it's going to be my story in detail. And I've given you the headlines. People know some of my story, but I'm going to go into real detail about my childhood, my abandoned childhood, my abusive childhood, all the way through losing my business, the whole detail. And then it moves on to the practical tips and learns and lessons I've learned through that journey around the six logos, the six
Yeah.
colors in my logo, their business, personal development, health and fitness, purpose, relationships, and wealth. And it talks about becoming the CEO of your life in all those facets. And it's a real window into me as a human being, but also I think it's got some great practical takeaways around the importance of building relationships. If you've got shit relationships outside of work, you're going to have bad ones inside of work. The most important relationship you need to have is with yourself as well. Having a proper defined purpose, a proper purpose is really important. And we've talked about this fair. What we're absorbing, what content we're absorbing, what we're eating, what we're putting in our bodies, health and fitness. And it's kind of like something I'm very proud of. It goes on pre-sale soon. And yeah, it's a bit of a labor of love, actually.
I was going to say, I do just want to ask you about the writing in a minute. Don't let me forget. But just in terms of that, I think so often, whether it's I love learning through podcasts, and I'm an old-fashioned book, so I will be buying it because I like to read a book. It takes things in isolation, and I think what I like about your premise is that it's all of those things are just as important as the other
Absolutely
thing.
right.
We
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
underestimate our personal relationships. We shouldn't underestimate the relationship we
No.
have with exercise, well-being, our mental health. It's all combined.
Yeah,
So
because from personal experience, I fell into the trap of if I can get my business to X amount, my whole life's going to be amazing. And I got to 10 million, 15 million, 20. Every time I got there, anticlimax, and I ended up losing relationships, losing myself,
yeah,
and everything else. So obviously, business is really, really, really important. But
yeah,
I've seen so many people, myself included, having an amazing business, but having a pretty shit life.
yeah.
You know,
I totally
so
agree with you. I just want to ask you about the writings. I've remembered, you see. You can tell I've had a good night's sleep.
oh,
Are you writing it, or are you typing it? Like, how do you find
oh
time?
no, I'm a traditional kind of to-do
Oh,
list on
I
my
love
book
that.
but I'm actually typing it. I'm actually because it's 25,000, 30,000 bloody words. It's a real and it's a project that I'm kind I've apportioned time in my diary where every other day I'm doing an extra page or two extra page or
Oh,
two,
okay.
and
I like that.
it's getting there. I'm
So you're
really
doing the
excited by it.
Pomodoro effect. You're kind of doing a task for 25 minutes and having a break.
Yeah, that's just what I teach my CEOs as well. It's about, I don't care if you've got 5 jobs on or 55,000 jobs on, you should always have time in your diary for BD and things like, right, I've got a personal trainer. I work out 4 times a week between 12 and 1 in my diary, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. That is an immovable meeting in
Non-negotiable.
my diary, right? So I've got color schemes in my diary. I've got personal development time. I've got health and fitness time. I've got my coaching time. I've got my clients' time. And it all balances out. And actually, I'm executing so much more. Whereas I think a lot
Yeah,
of people just throw it all in one go and kind of like, so organization is so important.
it really.
And if you're not going on the orange one, which is personal development, if you're not listening to audiobooks or podcasts as well, you're not growing. And I think that's just as important as the next business task as well. So for me, a good CEO isn't just doing 99% of business tasks all the time. He is or she is having downtime, personal development time in his or her diary so they can come back out of that and really add value to their team. And
Yeah.
that's the difference.
I agree with you totally. I can't wait. So we'll make sure we've got the links when we share this
Yeah, yeah,
in audio and on video channels as well. And I just knew you'd be amazing to get back on the channel because you said it in your introduction. You're just dead normal. You're dead down
thank
to
you.
earth. And I do think we're going into a new era where we seem to almost be losing the kind of facade that has dominated social media for
Yeah,
15 years of its, especially with the whole kind of freedom of speech, I just think we have to be
yeah, I
so
saw that. I think that's
moving
exciting. I think it could have gone the other way. And I think without being too political, I think people like Elon Musk and Trump, people have got their views on them, but I think we're in a better position now where it could have gone the other way. It got quite dark, didn't it, for quite a while. And I think I love the fact that um, there's that authenticity piece, and I think people are being found out as well because I think that on going back to LinkedIn without being too negative, there've been a lot of hustle bros, a lot of these kind of like pods and all this shit going on. And I think they've been found out. There's not as many of them, is there, at the moment? Do you think?
Well, no, because that the algorithms change, but in a good way. So you're not getting the same sort of impressions that you were. But for me, I've never been
Yeah,
about that. I stopped doing vanity metrics probably about 2021 when I just thought actually it's more
yeah,
important that I get one or two people from a post that want to partner with me, whether that's a client or a candidate, than
yeah.
getting 100,000 likes. It
Well,
just
that's the
doesn't matter.
difference. I was going to touch on that. So when I
Mm.
said at the start, I was doing it probably, be honest with you, how many likes have I got now? When I post, it's about intention. Is this going to add value? If it is, I'll
Yeah,
post it. If it's not, I won't post
absolutely.
it. So and I think you're a great example of that. I've got to say, you say that I look well. I think you look amazing. I think you come across well. You've got the integrity and the purpose, and I'm all for you. I think you're a bit of a sea change in the market, and I'm really proud to be part of this podcast and a friend of yours. And I think what you're doing is amazing. So
Thank you. Listen, I've just always been about, I've actually had an immovable purpose since I looked at my business is 20 years old this year. Key Recruitment will be
yes.
celebrating in October, and we're going to
Yeah.
Lisbon as a team. I'm so
Oh
excited.
wow.
Have a bit of
Awesome.
sunshine. Yeah, we're not having a party. We're just gonna go away, the four of us. But I think I have intentionally always set out to just be an honest, transparent human being who cares about people's career paths. And I don't think it's more difficult than that to be a good recruiter. I think if you're literally
No.
interested in people,
Yeah.
and I am naturally salesy, but I think,
Yeah.
I'd like to think I've been a good ambassador for the industry as to who
Yeah.
we should attract, who will make great recruiters and great leaders, and those who think it's a great career and
Yeah.
just haven't got the natural
Well,
curiosity.
that's it. You cannot be successful in recruitment by just having good process and good kind of like back office stuff and good organization. You
Transactional.
have to have emotional intelligence. You have to have intuition. You have to have this charisma, this sixth sense of a person. People outside of recruitment don't really get that. Like they think it's just a certain binary aspect, and there's a lot of emotional intelligence and just general kind of intuition and curiosity that we should both be very. It's a skill and an art, isn't it?
It. And I've always said I feel so blessed and lucky that this got to be my career because it's second
Yeah.
nature. I actually don't think about it too much, which has been hard when I've
No.
obviously for so long I was just on my own. I was a lone wolf. So when I've brought people in, I'm like, how do I actually do what I do? I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait for the book. So we'll let you crack on with it, and I
Yeah.
can't wait to read it. And thank you so much for appearing on the Recruiters Recruitment.
No, thank you. We'll have to arrange a lunch at some point. Can't wait.
Definitely, definitely.